Chapter 361, Cultivate the Heart and Temperament and the Great Tao shall be born. Creak, creak, creak. Numerous bright red peaches hung in the immortal peach forest. Those monkeys ran through the trees, calling out with joy. Now, us monkeys are the kings of the flower fruit mountain. No one would dare to bully us. All of this is the great king's efforts. That's true. Our great king is wise and suave. The monkeys chattered. They would occasionally glance at a tall figure far away with looks of reverence in their eyes. Hua, hua, hua. The 10,000-foot waterfall rained down. There was a huge rock that jutted out at the top of the waterfall, and a figure was sitting there with his hands resting on his kneecaps. Breath in, breath out. His chest heaved at regular intervals, and spiritual chi in the surroundings was forcefully gathered. The spiritual chi was incomparably thick and transformed into a corporeal spirit cloud, which was breathed in by that figure as he absorbed all the spiritual energy within. That figure was surrounded by mist, shimmering in and out of existence, and resembled an immortal. It was truly extraordinary to look at him. Who? A breath of turbid air was expelled. Feng Lin opened his eyes, and when he saw the monkeys playing around in the immortal peach forest, a smile appeared on his face. Earlier, the war against the three demon races had already ended. History didn't repeat. Under the leadership of the new monkey king, Feng Lin, the monkey tribe dominated the demonic tigers, pythons, and eagles. They completely swept through the flower fruit mountain with impunity and became the new tyrants. From now on, no demonic races would be able to threaten the monkey tribe. Pa. An invisible shackle seemed to be broken. The true meaning of the Monkey King was being digested as a strange feeling welled up in Feng Lin's heart. Warm currents coursed through his body. He felt that he was in a miraculous state where he was as one with the heavens. His spiritual force expanded immensely. The entire flower fruit mountain seemed to have become his domain as he felt an inseparable closeness with it. Any sort of changes in the flower fruit mountain were all clearly captured within his perception. All the spiritual chi was also within his perception and he could control them freely. Was this the true meaning of the Monkey King? The flower fruit mountain domain. A look of surprise appeared on Feng Lin's face. But all of this was within logic. Since he was a king would naturally have his own domain. Within his domain, he was the absolute overlord. And the domain of the Monkey King was undoubtedly the flower fruit mountain. So, this was the ability of the Monkey King gene. The Monkey King of the flower fruit mountain. His heart monkey force could affect the materialistic world now. After his Monkey King gene awakened, the power of the heart monkey force underwent a qualitative transformation and entered its high-level stage. At the place where he stood, his heart monkey force would automatically spread out and the area it enveloped would naturally become a domain that solely belonged to Feng Lin. The wind, fire, lightning, thunder, all sorts of energy within the domain would be under his control. He could use them freely. But right now, he was still in the illusionscape. He had no idea how this would work if he was in the real world. Within the mythological illusion realm, Feng Lin could clearly sense that the gigantic flower fruit mountain had truly become his territory. With a wave of his hand, and in the span of a breath, he could control the spiritual chi here fully. So this is the case. Feng Lin had a sudden sense of enlightenment. With no immortals in the mountains, the monkeys proclaimed themselves kings. He had already accomplished this step. Next, what he needed to do was to cross the sea and search for the Fengsuan mountain to seek out his Tao. Great King, what are you thinking about? An aged voice interrupted his thoughts. Feng Lin turned his head over only to see the three-armed ape walking over. I'm thinking about what the Eagle King said before it died. It is an avian beast and must definitely have seen the outside world. He said that when there are no immortals in the mountains, the monkeys proclaim themselves kings. Feng Lin languidly spoke. I feel very curious about what the outside world is like. Is there a divine mountain? It's rumored that the divine mountain can grant one longevity and immortality. The old monkey laughed. Great king, it's good that you are thinking so far ahead, your Tao heart has developed. Now, out of the 5 types of life forms, only 3 types are out of Yama King's control. This familiar words and similar scenes caused Feng Lin to be bewildered. Was this a scene brought on by the development of his Tao heart? He couldn't help but ask, what are the 3 types of life forms? The old monkey replied, they are Buddhas, immortals, and saints. They can evade reincarnation and are basically immortal as they share the same lifespan as the heavens and earth. Feng Lin continued, where do these 3 types of life forms reside in? The through-armed ape replied, some are roaming the mortal world. They might live in obscure places like ancient caves or immortal mountains. After hearing this, Feng Lin felt joy in his heart. I shall descend the flower fruit mountain tomorrow and cross the sea to explore the world. I will definitely search for one of those 3 types of life forms and learn the art of immortality to evade the calamity. That is the Yama King. As this sentence sounded out, a light seemed to appear in Feng Lin's mind. All his confusion was cleared and his heart was as clear as glass. Feng Lin stood up and began laughing uproariously. As the saying went, nurturing the spiritual root would allow the origin energy to flow. Cultivate one's heart and temperament and the great Tao shall be born. He completely understood how should he walk his future path. So what even if he became the Monkey King? He was only the Monkey King of this mountain, one of the demon kings that had ever existed in the Flower Fruit Mountain. Once his lifespan came to an end, no matter how great his achievements were in life, he would only end up being a speck of dirt at the very end. Only by becoming Sun Wukong would he be able to master the 72 transformations and roam through heavens and earth, with a single somersault on his golden cloud, sharing longevity with the heavens and earth. Only then would he truly be the Monkey King of the Flower Fruit Mountain. When one's heart and temperament were cultivated, only then would the great Tao be born. Next, what he needed to do was to temper his Tao heart. When he thought of this, Feng Lin spoke loudly, little ones, quickly prepare fruits and a boat. I shall descend the mountain tomorrow and cross the sea to explore the world. I will definitely find one of the 3 types of life forms and learn the art of immortality from them, evading the calamity of the Yama King. Great! When a person attains the Tao, the chickens and dogs they own shall ascend to heaven as well. We would be able to enjoy eternal life along with the great king. May the great king live forever. The monkeys all prostrated themselves upon hearing this and felt joy from the bottom of their hearts. For a time, the sounds of excitement echoed through the Flower Fruit Mountain. The commotion was so huge that it was like a volcano had exploded, causing the world to shudder. But as he stood among the crowd, Feng Lin felt a deep sense of fatigue in his heart. Without realizing it, he had already stayed for too long in the illusionary realm. Even if one spent 10,000 years here, the time outside would only amount to that of a fleeting dream. However, his heart would still feel weary if he spent too much time in here. It's time to wake up. Feng Lin had an understanding in his heart. Although the path of the Monkey King was only halfway explored, after all, he had just awakened the Monkey King gene and there was still a long path ahead of him. There was no need for him to be hasty. He could always come by again next time to probe the secrets further. He no longer hesitated. He sat cross-legged and entered a state of meditation, forgetting everything. His state of heart was like a calm lake. Awaken, awaken, awaken. His voice rang out from the depth of his heart, echoing in his mind. Faint ripples appeared on the lake in his heart. The illusions were broken and the scene before Feng Lin crumbled away. At the next moment, he discovered that he was sitting inside his room and there were huge changes to his life information. Name, Feng Lin. Vitality stat, 2689. Heaven gene, Monkey King gene X1. Transcendent genes, Spiritual Stone Monkey gene X10, Beast King gene X10. Primeval genes, Stone Monkey gene X10, Spirit gene X10, bestial gene X9, violence gene X8, coercion gene X6. Basic genes, monkey gene X10, stone birth gene X10, adrenaline gene X4, mental gene X9, psychokinesis gene X6, spirituality gene X8, bloodthirst gene X10, beast heart gene X7, strength gene X9, savage gene X8, pressure gene X8, prestige gene X6. Genetic potential 872. Chapter 362, Monkey King gene. His new stats refreshed and bright light gleamed in Feng Lin's eyes. Vitality stat, 2689. He just broke through to the Grand Cultivator realm, and his vitality stat explosively surged, directly breaking past the 2000 mark and almost reached 3000. It felt like being born anew, but it was much more than that. Currently, among the freshmen in the Great Wall University, other than Donghuang Taichu and Augustus, there were no others who could suppress him. But as for how strong his combat prowess was compared to the two, they had to truly fight before he knew. Things were the same as when he just broke through to the elite cultivator realm. Because his foundation was extremely deep, once he broke through, his vitality instantly erupted upwards. Even among grand cultivators, he wasn't a weakling. If this breakthrough happened earlier, he wouldn't have chosen to enter the Great Wall University right away and would definitely seize the opportunity to join the Cosmos ranking battle. But things couldn't be helped. He cultivated too late and his accumulations were insufficient. If he lagged one step behind, he would always lag behind. Luckily, the Sun Wukong mythological path was tyrannical enough. He was catching up to his peers and now almost equal to them. Feng Lin wasn't overly bothered by the past. He soon adjusted his state of mind and sensed the transformations that occurred to him. A moment later, he made a discovery. Under the surveillance of his heart monkey force, the interior of his body was gleaming with treasure light. His flesh and blood, bones, cells, all parts of his body were infused with transcendent force all the way to the genetic level. He had transformed into a type of semi-material and semi-energy life form. His life just underwent a qualitative transformation. This was none other than the heaven gene. Now, his transcendent abilities were able to pass through to his future generations through genetic replication. A gene shackle seemed to be broken free. Just this point alone made it possible for Feng Lin to become the progenitor of a clan. His descendants would inherit his transcendent abilities, and their mythological genes would follow his. The clan he found would resemble those mythological clans currently existing in the universe. As his life underwent a qualitative evolution, his strength and speed would naturally be explosively enhanced. Feng Lin could clearly sense that in all his cells, the heart monkey force had gathered and formed a crystalline structure with runes floating within. Monkey King Domain. A message suddenly appeared in Feng Lin's mind. After awakening the Monkey King gene, the heart monkey force could permeate the surroundings and form a domain. Wind, fire, thunder, lightning, all elements would be in his control within his domain. Domain activate. With his will, Feng Lin caused his domain to be activated. The heart monkey force surged out, stretching outwards in a radius of 3 meters. Everything within was captured precisely in his perception. Just by thinking about it, he could cause countless changes to appear. The wind rose, the fire blazed, the water gathered. All sorts of elemental energy manifested around Feng Lin, transforming into sphere-like objects that could be seen by the naked eye, revolving around him. Fire and water became fog, wind and fog became clouds, wind and clouds became thunder. All sorts of changes manifested, giving birth to numerous phenomena. Crackle. All of a sudden, lightning struck down at the ground, turning the patch of ground black. Feng Lin gained an understanding in his heart. In the situation where the strengthening tally of the Monkey King gene was at one point, the radius of his domain would only be 3 meters around him. Inside his domain, he could control all types of energy and invoke countless changes to them. But the higher the quality of energy he wanted to control was, the more consumption would there be to his genetic force. For example, he had to invoke many changes just to summon a bolt of thunder. If there were no limits, wouldn't Feng Lin be able to manifest black holes or even wormholes? Things would be too unscientific then. But there were no absolutes in the world. As the Monkey King gene strengthened, the radius would expand rapidly. Once it was maxed out, the radius would be a 30-meter boundary. The control of different energies within would also be greatly enhanced. Although the radius was small, the power wasn't weak at all. Hence, inside the Monkey King domain, he was God. Unless the other party used their genetic abilities, all control rights over energy in this domain would be under Feng Lin's control. Good method. No matter how calm Feng Lin was, he could definitely feel how tyrannical this ability was. The Monkey King gene was as expected of a perfect grade heaven gene. Its ability could be said to be unrivaled among same-graded genes. It could only be broken by brute force. If not, once someone fell into his domain, they would only be his prey. As he got himself familiarized with the Monkey King gene's ability, Feng Lin turned his attention onto the mythological gene itself. His genetic map showed 3 golden constellations linked together by an astral river that resembled a bridge, forming a triangular formation. Spiritual Stone Monkey Gene X10 plus Beast King Gene X10 equals Monkey King Gene. A triangle was the most stable structure of all. Thus, it would be the most stable foundation for his mythological pathway. But Feng Lin was worried about what his future path would be. 0, 1, 2, 3. The genetic numbers in levels were in an ordered sequence. Level 2 genes were transcendent genes, level 3 genes were heaven genes, while level 4 genes were Hotian genes. In the Western mythological system, Hotian genes could also be known as black metal genes. What was Hotian, postnatal? It meant that one's effort and hard work after they were born could make up for the lack of one's innate talent to a certain extent. During the desolate era of Huaxia, lifeforms were classified into 3 types: Hotian, Xiantian, and Primal Chaos. Primal Chaos lifeforms were all born from chaos. They had the innate quality to surpass the heavens and earth, and each of them was equivalent to gods and devils, born with boundless might. For Xiantian lifeforms, they were the favorites of heaven and earth, born before the world was split, sharing longevity with the heavens and earth. Hotian lifeforms referred to lifeforms born after the heavens and earth were split into 2. However, they were gifted with creativity and had many methods at their disposal. Feng Lin was walking on Sun Wukong mythological path, and each stage had a mythological gene corresponding to it. The level 0 gene was the monkey gene, the level 1 gene was the stone monkey gene, the level 2 gene was the spiritual stone monkey gene, the level 3 gene was the Monkey King gene. Upon reaching this point, there was no need for him to probe the unknown as much as he did in the past. Without a doubt, the level for corresponding gene to this mythological path was the Sun Wukong gene. The deduction of mythological pathways depended on myths and legends as the context. One had to research the growth of the mythological character step by step. After experiencing multiple mythological illusion realms, he was already extremely clear of his past. There was no need for him to waste his precious genetic potential to slowly infer. In fact, he even had a general idea for the evolution portions after the Sun Wukong gene was awakened. There was no need to undervalue oneself. After spending so much time on mythological cultivation, he didn't spend so much time for nothing. With regard to his own path, Feng Lin was already pretty clear and didn't feel any confusion. Many minor details in the myths and legends of Sun Wukong also verified this point. Since this was the case, Feng Lin didn't hesitate and immediately started the deduction. By assuming the level E3 gene of the Sun Wukong mythological path was the Monkey King gene. With reference to the lower-level genes such as the spiritual stone monkey gene and the others, he began to infer the equation. From his genetic map within his dantian, the nebulas that were his genetic potential began to stir. His conjecture was right. Feng Lin wasn't shocked but was happy instead. The reduction in his genetic potential meant that his current path was correct. If not, there wouldn't be a change to his genetic potential at all. Genetic potential -8.6, -8.6, -8.6. As the level of the genes became higher, the genetic equation ability also needed to exhaust more genetic potential. Very soon, over 100 points in genetic potential were consumed. The energy within 100 nebulas was drained as the nebulas exploded. Finally, after a 200-point consumption in his genetic potential, a brand new evolutionary genetic formula appeared before his eyes. Just like before, because the Sun Wukong mythological path was a paragon pathway. It was unique, and each stage only had a single evolutionary formula. Feng Lin looked at it, but he soon had a strange expression on his face. Monkey King Gene X10 plus Dao Heart Gene X10 equals Sun Wukong Gene. Chapter 363, Dao Heart Gene. Monkey King Gene X10 plus Dao Heart Gene X10 equals Sun Wukong Gene. The number 10 represented perfection. This evolutionary formula gave him a sense of déjà vu. After each gene was strengthened to 10 points, they would contain a type of supreme logic of the heavens and earth, invoking a change that could transform something rotten into something magical. The spiritual stone monkey gene became the higher-leveled Monkey King gene, while the Beast King gene became the Dao Heart gene. A shimmering starry path took form in his genetic map, leading to an incomparably majestic dark star in the depths of the starry space. It felt like it was waiting to be awakened. Sun Wukong Gene, Grand Grade Heavenly Immortal Art verifies the Tao, proficient in the 72 transformations. These two sentences seemed simple, but they contained much cryptic profoundness. Feng Lin contemplated it and suddenly recalled Chapter 17 of the novel A Journey to the West. It was at the temple where Sun Wukong achieved his Tao. There was a single sentence, gaining the inheritance of a grand grade heavenly immortal art, but if one doesn't have the innate root, it would be unbearable to train in this. The grand grade heavenly immortal art was the basic cultivation art Sun Wukong cultivated. The 72 transformations were his most powerful skill. The ability of the Sun Wukong gene might truly have a great connection with this particular cultivation art. But as to its exact abilities, how wondrous would it be exactly? For now, Feng Lin wasn't able to know clearly either. Because the road ahead was still too long, there were still things that weren't completely clear for now. But the path would always be beneath his feet. He just needed to traverse it step by step. There was no need for him to bite off more than he could chew and became hasty just for the moment. Thinking too far ahead wouldn't have any benefits. His future path was already laid out very clearly before him. Although there was still fog ahead, he simply had to continue down this path step by step. He wouldn't be lost due to the fog. The medicinal effect of the Dragon Tiger Exchange fetus pill was extremely strong. Although he had already broken through to the Grand Cultivator realm, he still obtained over 700 genetic points. Feng Lin's heart stirred. He started to add points to strengthen the Monkey King gene, but his genetic potential didn't change. He didn't feel too surprised. Every level up in mythological genes would evoke a great increase of 10x the required amount of genetic potential compared to the previous level. Transcendent genes needed 100 points of genetic potential to be strengthened once. It seemed like the higher-level heaven genes would require 1,000 points of genetic potential to be strengthened by one. After performing the deduction, he was only left with a sparse amount of genetic potential. It was completely insufficient for him to use. He could temporarily forget about strengthening the Monkey King gene. He should put more effort into researching how he should evolve his gene to the Dao Heart gene. Gene, Dao Heart gene. Grade, Perfect Grade Heaven gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, Sprouting of Dao Heart, Heaven and Man as one. This was actually a perfect grade Heaven gene. The information revealed was extremely simple, yet its ability was extremely impressive. Just the words, heaven and man as one, would cause one to have countless fantasies. Heaven and man as one was an ultimate state that Huaxia cultivators pursued. After the fusion of essence, spirit, and qi together with the heavenly Tao, one would reach a wondrous state where they could control the power of the sky and earth, of mountains and rivers, of stars, sun, and moon with a wave of their hands, becoming one with the heavens. Using the infinitesimal power of humans as a pivot to draw upon the might of heaven and earth, one could gain control over boundless possibilities. It was simple in words, but the meaning contained within wasn't simple at all. It contained immense potential. But how should one go about the fusion? That was the question. Branches from a genetic tree would always start from the most basic genes, before being combined and evolved. Feng Lin began to deduce, consuming his genetic potential for the sake of obtaining the evolutionary formula for the Tao heart gene. His genetic potential was rapidly exhausted like water breaking a dam. Genetic potential -4.2, -4.2, -4.2. The evolutionary formula of a heaven gene consumed over 200 points of genetic potential before it was revealed. In his genetic map, with the Tao heart gene as the starting point, the streams of light flowed downwards and connected with two dark stars. Tao heart gene equals minute knowledge gene x9 plus meditation gene x8. This was a heaven gene that required the combination of two transcendent genes. Each of them had extraordinary might and ability. Just awakening one of them would allow someone in the elite cultivator realm to run amok and do whatever he wanted at that particular realm. Gene, minute knowledge gene. Grade, flawless grade transcendent gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, discern the whole picture from one tiny clue, a fulcrum to lift the entire world. Gene, meditation gene. Grade, perfect grade transcendent gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, invisible meditation, perceiving the universe, manipulating the multitude of things. The abilities of the two genes were different. Each of them was a transcendent gene and he would still need to combine the lower-level primeval genes and basic genes to form them, building a genetic tree as stated by mythological gene theory. The higher one's cultivation was, the more the number of genes involved would be. Cultivation would become much more complex, and in the end, one's genetic point would look like the starry sky. Without supreme intelligence, one would never be able to walk on the path of cultivation until the end, let alone accomplishing different objectives needed to awaken the various genes. For ordinary people, they could use an entire lifetime and still fail to determine the proper sequence of a genetic evolution formula. But to Feng Lin, this point wasn't a great problem. With his genetic equation, everything was possible. A smile appeared on his face as he continued to deduce by using his genetic potential. Genetic potential -1.2, -1.2, -1.2. As the genetic potential was exhausted, two more dark stars were deduced and the branching out continued, linking up with two more dark stars. The branches extended down to the next lower level. In total, there were 3 levels, and after deducing everything, the complete evolutionary formula for the Tao heart gene appeared. If the first level was the sequence to evolve a heaven gene, the second level would be for transcendent genes, while the third level would be for primeval genes. The formula was shown in his vision. Minute knowledge gene equals wisdom gene x7 plus knowledge gene x8. Meditation gene equals awareness gene x10 plus visualize gene x7. Gene, wisdom gene. Grade, perfect grade primeval gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, developed wisdom, seeing the true nature. Gene, knowledge gene. Grade, perfect grade primeval gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, knowledge is power. Gene, awareness gene. Grade, high grade transcendent gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, mysterious sixth sense, foresee blessing and calamity. Gene, visualize gene. Grade, high grade transcendent gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, visualize fabrications to see the truth. There were actually 4 transcendent genes that extended out from this layer. Also, it didn't end like this. The branching out continued. At the 3rd layer, the evolutionary order of primeval gene. Wisdom gene equals intellect gene x9 plus thinking gene x9. Knowledge gene equals learning gene x10 plus memory gene x6. Awareness gene equals idea gene x9 plus perception gene x5. Visualized gene equals inner vision gene x7 plus imagination gene x9. Gene, intellect gene. Grade, high grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, developed intellect, innately bright and intelligent. Gene, thinking gene. Grade, high grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, sharpens thinking, improved deduction. Gene, learning gene. Grade, high grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, clear mind, Godspeed in learning. Gene, memory gene. Grade, high grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, strong and retentive memory with a single glance. Gene, idea gene. Grade, flawless grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, parallel thoughts, able to focus on many things at once, multitasking. Gene, perception gene. Grade, flawless grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, formless metal energy, perceive the external world. Gene, inner vision gene. Grade, flawless grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, formless mental energy, gaining vision of the interior of one's body. Gene, imagination gene. Grade, flawless grade basic gene. Strengthening tally, 0. Ability, boundless imagination, countless transformations. Chapter 364, Frenzied Evolution. Using the Tao Heart gene as the ultimate point, from top to bottom, there was a total of 3 levels of evolution. These 3 levels formed a genetic tree with branches extending out, right next to the Monkey King gene. The gigantic genetic tree's embryonic form gradually grew from a small sapling to an ordinary-sized tree. And as for awakening the Tao Heart gene, Feng Lin understood that he had to do this step by step from the lowest tier, the basic tier genes. 8 basic tier genes to evolve into 4 primeval tier genes, to evolve into 2 transcendent tier genes, into 1 heaven tier gene. The amount of genetic potential needed was extremely exaggerated, needing roughly 2,000 free genetic points. Moreover, the evolution condition for each gene was different. To evolve so many genes was truly something that required a lot of effort. And after so many attempts at deduction, Feng Lin's genetic potential was almost drained dry. As one's cultivation realm increased, the consumption of genetic potential would naturally increase as well. One had to store sufficient genetic points before they could continue to break through. After just experiencing the long journey in the mythological illusion realm, although the amount of time that had passed in the outside world wasn't a lot, he was still fatigued mentally due to him experiencing too many things. Feng Lin then entered a very deep sleep. He didn't dream of anything during this sleep, and after he woke up, he instantly started to cultivate again. A pill with patterns of dragons and tigers could be seen in his hand, with its full medicinal potency solidly packed within. He consumed it in a single gulp. The pill melted instantly when it entered his mouth, transforming into waves of warm currents that circulated throughout his body. The currents were packed with an abundance of medicinal potency, nourishing his body. It was like there was a burning furnace within his stomach. Each of his cells was in an overload state, his potential was fully stimulated. Genetic potential plus 10.2, plus 10.2, plus 10.2. Each surge in genetic potential would exceed the number 10. Its speed of increase was also faster than before. As his spirit force extended outwards, he faintly formed a resonance with heavens and earth, and entered a miraculous state of mind. Each breath he took would seemingly cause the surroundings to tremble as the energy in the area fluctuated. Monkey King of the Flower Fruit Mountain, when the heart and temperament are tempered, the great Tao shall be birthed. After experiencing the mythological illusionary realm, his Tao heart had already sprouted. He felt no confusion about his path of awakening the Tao heart gene. It would naturally awaken. His genetic potential flowed out, causing numerous dark stars in his genetic map to lit up and shine with golden light. Intellect gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Thinking gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Learning gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Memory gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Idea gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Perception gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Inner vision gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. Imagination gene awakening, +1, +1, +1. The 8 basic genes required for the Tao heart gene evolutionary path were all awakened. They were then rapidly strengthened to the max. After achieving certain conditions, the golden stars sent out rays of astral light which fused together, becoming 4 astral rivers that extended toward the depths of the dark starry sky. Bat hump, bat hump, bat hump. A powerful thumping sound echoed. As the astral light from the river continued flowing, 4 larger dark stars lit up as well. Intellect gene equals wisdom gene x9 plus thinking gene x9. Knowledge gene equals learning gene x10 plus memory gene x6. Awareness gene equals idea gene x9 plus perception gene x5. Visualized gene equals inner vision gene x7 plus imagination gene x9. His genetic potential erupted forth, strengthening the primeval genes he had just awakened. Wisdom gene, +1, +1, +1. Knowledge gene, +1, +1, +1. Awareness gene, +1, +1, +1. Visualize gene, +1, +1, +1. Things hadn't stopped yet. Very soon, the 4 primeval genes were maxed out and rapidly began to combine. Minute knowledge gene equals wisdom gene x7 plus knowledge gene x8. Meditation gene equals awareness gene x10 plus visualize gene x7. Minute knowledge gene, +1, +1, +1. Meditation gene, +1, +1, +1. From nothing to something. The earlier steps would always be the hardest. And now that Feng Lin was already a grand cultivator, for new basic, primeval, and transcendent genes he awakened, the progress would naturally be smoother compared to the past. There wouldn't be many shackles. His progress was like the surging tides, rapidly crashing through all obstacles. After the Dragon Tiger Exchange fetus pill was completely digested, only then did the genetic evolution slow down. And at this moment, Feng Lin's life information underwent a huge transformation. Name, Feng Lin. Vitality stat, 3018. Heaven gene, Monkey King gene x1. Transcendent gene, Spiritual Stone Money gene x10, Beast King gene x10, Minute Knowledge gene x3, Meditation gene x4. Genetic potential, 588. Mad evolution led to an explosive surge in vitality. 2 types of transcendent genes, 4 types of primeval genes, and 8 types of basic genes were all awakened in one shot, instantly pushing Feng Lin's vitality to an unprecedented high, directly breaking the 3,000-point mark. Feng Lin slowly opened his eyes. His body subconsciously radiated waves of energy that distorted the space around him, becoming visible fluctuations that flowed out from him. For a time, the place where he was standing became the center of the energy storm. This was merely the external change. For internal changes, he had a feeling that he would discover a surprise. His will left the bindings of his flesh. Nothing could restrict it, he could see everything. He peered inwards, gaining a vision of the interior of his body. He only felt that the vigorous energy within his body surged out like spring water in unending waves, soaking each of his cells, blood, organs, all parts of his body, infusing them with great power. After that, Feng Lin retracted his inner vision and glanced at the surroundings in the outside world. He had a feeling that with a lift of his hand, he could form a resonance with the heavens and control boundless amounts of energy. And even if he were to close his eyes, everything would appear in his perception. Breath in, breath out. As his chest heaved, the spiritual qi in the air gathered over, becoming a gust of wind which slowly expanded into a giant vortex that enveloped him. Genetic potential plus 3.1, plus 3.1, plus 3.1. Even without consuming any medical pills, his genetic potential suddenly surged, with each increase being over 3. At this moment, Feng Lin felt an incomparably wondrous feeling. His thoughts were like lightning, spinning rapidly. In the past, within his vision, spiritual qi was just spiritual qi. It was a type of gaseous substance. But now, his thoughts had entered microcosm, and spiritual qi in his perception had transformed into balls of air particles that could be breathed in by him. Each particle radiated a transcendent glow, and upon breathing them in, they would seep deep into each of his cells, transforming his genetic matter and evolving him to a higher-level life form. He didn't stop cultivating. His evolution was like the surging tides, the waves flowed out again and again in an unending manner. After seeing the true form of spiritual qi particles, his absorption of them also enhanced their effects to the maximum. The speed of him gaining genetic potential far surpassed his imaginations. Feng Lin's entire body was floating. It felt like he was standing atop a typhoon and would be sent soaring into the sky from the vast amount of energy he was absorbing. He felt his entire body was in the midst of an upgrade for every second that passed. This feeling was like being in seventh heaven. He was completely immersed within and couldn't stop even if he wanted to. An old phrase from the ancient Earth era could summarize his state perfectly. When one gets high from cultivation, they would feel that their life has already reached the pinnacle. And after reaching the pinnacle, everything they experienced in the future would be dull and insipid. Feng Lin calmed his state of heart. After his cultivation, before he could gain any rest, it was already morning. A brand new day started. Another day of devil training would soon begin. Chapter 365, Interstellar Lightning-Style Battle. After he stopped his cultivation, Feng Lin immediately rushed to the training ground. Very soon, the other freshmen all arrived in small groups of 3 to 5 people. They stood in neat rows with straight backs and quietly waited. The fierceness of the instructor was known to all. If someone dared to defy his orders, they would instantly be lashed. Devil training paid particular attention to iron-blooded discipline. It was a good way to see if one's will was strong enough or not. If they got on the wrong side of the instructor, they wouldn't even have a place to cry even if they wanted to cry. Thud, thud, thud. The sounds of footsteps rang out. The instructor walked over, and there were a bunch of robots behind him, bringing micromecha armors with them. Is the instructor going to try some new tricks? The freshmen exchanged glances, feeling somewhat depressed in their hearts. The overload devil training for the first day has already concluded. I'm already very clear about your endurance and will. Next, we will begin a new devil training, the Interstellar Lightning-Style Battle. The instructor stood before everyone and stared at them. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, wanting to pierce through them. All of you are students of the Great Wall University as well as one of the most elite warriors among the younger generation. Interstellar humans would often clash with alien races throughout the years in either minor clashes or major clashes. Living an easy and comfortable life would only cause deaths. Now, what we are planning to let you all go through is precisely an interstellar leader execution battle. We will be disembarking on a certain planet, and the mission is for you all to assassinate the leaders of an alien race who go by the title of Cave Dweller Chieftains. Everyone, quickly don your equipment. All of you are supposed to work together in this battle. He announced a mission for this stage of training. What? Our numbers are so little, yet you want us to assassinate the leader of an alien race? This is too dangerous. Cave dwellers are a race that stays in the core of a planet. The environment is extremely vile and completely unfavorable to humans. This is merely training. Is there a need to go so far? That's right, we might really die. Die? The instructor laughed with disdain. Since you all have chosen the path of cultivation, you shouldn't be afraid of death. You must remember that right now, you guys are not only students but are also frontier guards of humanity. If you are afraid of death, why did you join the Great Wall University? During recruitment, everything was already made clear to you. There would always be a death count from our devil training yearly. It's fine if you all wish to quit now. If this is the case, step out now. Those who gave up on this mission shall be expelled from the Great Wall University. There's no longer a need for trash like those to participate in this mission. His voice was filled with menace and biting cold, killing intent. The instructor was cruel and cold-blooded, not giving the freshmen any way to reject. The freshmen were all momentarily speechless. But no one dared to speak out to rebut the instructor anymore. It wasn't easy for them to join the Great Wall University. If they were expelled so soon after joining, how shameful would that be? They wouldn't be able to bear such shame. Where the equipment and board the debarkation flying shuttle now. Don't blame me for not being polite if you all are slower even by a single second, said the instructor in a strict tone. He brandished his whip and lashed out on the ground for a grand effect. Everyone also didn't have the time to complain. They hurriedly obeyed because they knew that the instructor wouldn't be polite to them at all. All of them were elites and naturally would have fast movements. Very quickly, they were fully equipped. Get on the shuttle. The instructor pointed to a gigantic universe-flying shuttle as the door opened. The freshmen lined up in groups and entered. The flying shuttle then activated, flying into the air and entered a wormhole after some traveling. The freshmen sat facing each other. The atmosphere was solemn and felt extremely tense. At this moment, the instructor walked over. He opened up a holographic projection and revealed a completely dark planet. This planet looked like a huge ball of black metal. There were no water sources, and it didn't seem to be a planet where life could exist. This is the black metal planet and 60% of the ground here contains metallic elements. The surface of the planet's crust is constantly shrouded in darkness and it is extremely cold. The ecosystem of the planet lies beneath its crust. The more one gets toward the core, the warmer it would be. Cave dwellers reside on this planet, but members of this alien race are extremely sensitive to thermal radiation. Once we got close to their nest, we would instantly be discovered and you all will be heavily besieged and surrounded by them. The situation then would be extremely dangerous. Hence, we need a plan. The atmosphere of the black metal planet is extremely thin. During the daytime, there's only 2 hours of light. But because this is a metallic planet, the temperature would rapidly rise above 300 degrees. Under such a scorching temperature, the cave dwellers would enter deep sleep, and their senses would also be the weakest then. The best place for us to land is 1,000 kilometers away from their nests. You all have to rush there with lightning speed and sneak into their nest when their senses are weakened, taking the chance to kill the chieftains of this nest. After speaking, the instructor pointed to a location reflected on the holographic projection, and an extremely deep ravine appeared before the eyes of everyone. How monstrous! The expressions of the freshmen all turned extremely unsightly. In an environment over 300 degrees in temperature, they had to run over 1,000 kilometers within 2 hours and even had to assassinate a cave-dweller chieftain. What a terrifying interstellar lightning-style battle! Was this even accomplishable by humans? This devil training was simply like walking on a tightrope. If one wasn't careful, they would die a terrible death. This battle is extremely tough and dangerous. Hence, everyone would have a chance to be saved. Once you all are in inescapable danger, press the warning button on your wrist and I will immediately act to save you. But if you do this, you all would no longer obtain any rewards and your academic points would even be deducted. For this mission, the first person to kill a chieftain would obtain 100,000 contribution points and 1,000 academic points. The second would gain 20,000 contribution points and 200 academic points. The third would gain 10,000 contribution points, 100 academic points. Next, for the other 7 of the first 10, they would receive 5,000 contribution points and 50 academic points. Within the first 100 rankings, they will receive 1,000 contribution points and 10 academic points. After the first 100 rankings, there would no longer be any reward, but those who pass would still be able to receive genetic potions and nutrient solutions provided by the university. Begin your preparations now. We will reach the black metal planet in 3 hours. After telling everyone the mission, the instructor turned and left, leaving the freshmen here. The freshmen began to check their equipment. The following training would be exceedingly dangerous, thus, they had to be 100% prepared. Very soon, 3 hours passed. The black planet in the distance grew closer. And under the light rays, the black planet reflected a reddish glow, making it resemble a huge fireball. Begin to disembark. After the flying shuttle entered the atmosphere of the planet, the shuttle's door swung open. The freshmen all jumped out from the shuttle. In an instant, the fiery heat gushed forth right in their faces. This planet seemed more like a giant furnace instead. Earth tunneling technique. The moment the freshman landed on the ground, one of the students immediately executed a move. His body glowed with an earthen yellowish light as he silently burrowed into the ground, rapidly tunneling toward his objective. Wind movement technique. Another one of the freshmen executed a technique. His body was surrounded by wind energy as he soared through the air. Gravity technique. Another freshman controlled gravity, allowing him to perform leaps of great distance with ease. The freshmen began to unleash a variety of techniques. They had to move 1,000 kilometers within 2 hours in this scorching hot environment. If they used their legs to run, how long would that take them? Golden Crow fire escape. Who? A flowing stream of fire arced through the sky as a golden figure shimmered in and out of existence. It was none other than Dongwang Taichu. Flap, flap. 2 pairs of pure white wings actually appeared on Augustus's back, making him resemble a 4-winged angel. He rapidly soared through the skies as well. These 2 instantly flew far ahead of the pack, leading the others by a great margin. Swish. But at this moment, a colored cloud somersaulted. Feng Lin executed his cloud soar ability and dashed past everyone with lightning speed. This brat. Donghuang Taichu and Augustus glanced at each other as their expressions froze. They hurriedly increased their speed and chased after Feng Lin. The 3 of them didn't want to lose out to each other and kept increasing their speed at intervals, trying to overtake each other. Soon, they left the other freshmen far behind their dust. But as time passed by, both Donghuang Taichu and Augustus were stunned. The distance between them and Feng Lin didn't decrease but actually increased instead. What cultivation base does this brat have exactly? What genetic ability is that? He could be so quick even when flying. Everything was a mystery. The atmosphere in Black Metal Planet was truly like a steaming furnace. Even with the micromecha armor equipped, everyone was sweating profusely. The lightning-style battle required luck and chance as well. Time was of the essence. Feng Lin increased his speed even further. There was nothing to obstruct him in the air. Very soon, he discovered a ravine that emitted a dangerous feeling. The canyon looked like a huge gaping maw on the surface of the ground, resembling a black hole that would devour everything. Chapter 366, each displaying their abilities. The ravine was extremely deep. It looked like a huge maw on the ground surface, a black hole that could devour everything. Earth crater, giant ravine. This was the largest ravine on the black metal planet. Its depth was over 30,000 meters, incomparably deep. Although it was currently daytime, everything in the ravine was shrouded by darkness. One wouldn't even be able to see their fingers if they stretched out their hands. This was the largest nest of cave dwellers on black metal planet. Cave dwellers were subterranean biological creatures. They hated the light, and the deeper they stayed inside the ravine, the higher their status would be. Undoubtedly, the chieftains would surely live right at the bottom. To catch thieves, one has to catch their head first. Time was limited, and so no delays were permitted. Feng Lin was still using his cloud soar and directly entered the ravine. Swish. Very soon, Donghuang Taichu and Augustus also arrived. The sound of sonic booms accompanied their arrival, causing a commotion that shook the entire space below. Su, su, su. Sounds of four-limbed creatures moving could be heard. Feng Lin glanced at the surroundings only to see that the interior of the underground cave was like a beehive. It was densely packed and filled with small openings where countless beings were rushing out from them. After observing closely, he discovered that they were humanoid monsters. They had anti-joints and a total of 6 hands and feet and were hanging upside down like spiders. Their heads were black and had no hair. Their eyes were compound eyes like flies, staring over at Feng Lin and the other two. Drool dripped from their mouths as greed flickered in their faces. It was as though humans were great sources of nutrition for them. The sight of them would cause people to tremble in fear. However, Feng Lin and the other two didn't bother with them. They moved in a straight line and continued descending. No one was willing to fall behind. The first person who could kill a chieftain would undoubtedly be the number one. The number one would gain 100,000 contribution points and 1,000 academic points, while the number two would only gain 20,000 contribution points and 200 academic points. What the number two got would only be 1/5 of the number one. And as the ranking fell, the rewards grew much lesser as well. Obviously, the number one rank had the most value. Also, regardless of Donghuang Taichu or Augustus, both were top geniuses. How could they give up on the first ranking? It was impossible. The three of them were filled with a competitive spirit, leaving the other freshmen far behind their dust. Roar. Upon seeing the 3 uninvited guests entering their nest, the cave dwellers were all alarmed. Poo, piu, piu. Black silhouettes flashed past the cave wall. They were like bats and flew over en masse. The cave dwellers flying together actually looked like a black-colored ocean tide wanting to submerge them. Golden Crow True Fire. At this moment Donghuang Taichu acted. His body gleamed with golden flames, and the boundless heat wanted to incinerate everything in the world. He manifested a fireball over 10 meters big and tossed it over. Chi, chi, chi. Those monsters were instantly disintegrated the moment they came in contact with the fire. True fire, it was another source of true fire again. Feng Lin himself possessed the earth fiend true fire. How could he not be able to recognize the fireball Donghuang Taichu had manifested? However, it was actually the extremely rare Golden Crow True Fire, said to be the number one in terms of firepower among true fires. It could incinerate anything in the world. Angelic holy light. At this moment, Augustus wasn't willing to lose out. Under the besiegement, he unleashed a powerful technique. His 4 wings spread open, radiating boundless holy light. The rays of light were like sharp swords shooting outwards. Those monsters were instantly torn into 1,000 bits, becoming shredded meat. With the 2 of them at the center, their surroundings became an absolute kill zone. No matter how many cave dwellers rushed over, all of them died miserably. Monkey King Domain. The place where he established dominance was the Flower Fruit Mountain. This was also the first time Feng Lin unleashed the combat strength of a grand cultivator. The heart monkey force was stimulated to the extreme, permeating the atmosphere. His ability didn't seem as majestic as the other 2 when viewed from afar. But when the cave dwellers rushed over and entered the boundary of the domain, fire rose, clouds surged, ice froze, thunder strike. All sorts of elemental powers blasted at them. The cave dwellers died in agony. It seemed that Feng Lin could casually control any type of energy depending on his intention. This was also why the spiritual stone monkey was proficient in transformation. Although the appearance of his domain wasn't flashy, it was much more effective compared to the abilities of those two. Jijigwagwawala. The cave dwellers began to shriek. They were wielding black-colored metallic tubes in their hands. Bang, bang, bang. A bright light erupted as flames were emitted from the metallic tubes. Since the cave dwellers were considered an alien race, they naturally had their own civilization. If not, they would only be called alien life forms. These cave dwellers now took out gunpowder technology. Also, these didn't seem to be ordinary gunpowder. It was unknown what was the composition of the metal bullets. However, they were as dense as rain and exuded coldness, ruthlessly bombarding Feng Lin and the other two. With many ants biting an elephant, the elephant would die in the end as well. These metal bullets slammed into the micromecha armor, and the powerful force of the impact caused the three of them to tremble as their genetic force was consumed. Feng Lin and the other two didn't plan to waste their time with these minions. They displayed their might, sending out an energy wave that created a huge crater and burying these cave dwellers. The deeper they went, the more cave dwellers came out. It was like they had entered a hornet's nest. The countless inhabitants of the nest gushed forth like the tides in response to their invasion. These cave dwellers in the inner parts were different from those from outside. They actually had 8 limbs. 4 were used for climbing while the other 4 brandished weapons as they rushed over, exuding a baleful air resembling valiant warriors. The weapons in their hands were forged from strange metals. They were incomparably tough and weren't afraid of energy attacks damaging them. Donghua Taichu's fire and Augustus's holy light instantly lost a great deal of their effect. They then decided to attack physically. One of them wielded a long spear while the other brandished a giant sword with a gemstone inlay on the pommel, killing their way into the cave dwellers. Woo, woo, woo. The sounds of a metal cudgel hitting objects rang out constantly. Feng Lin wielded his weapon to great effect. He unleashed his cudgel arts, drawing impenetrable circles in the air, unleashing his full strength. The moment those cave dwellers got near, they were instantly crushed into pieces. But this place was one of the nests of this alien race, their numbers were almost endless. They entered into the depths of this nest and it seemed to them that there were countless enemies. The number of enemies didn't seem to have dwindled at all. Kill. Rush into this nest to kill the chieftain. At this moment, excited voices rang out from outside the nest. An energy ball fell from the sky like a shooting star as numerous figures rushed within. Those freshmen that lagged behind finally arrived. With the addition of the other freshmen, the pressure on Feng Lin and the 2 others were greatly alleviated. Go. Feng Lin instantly rushed toward the depths. Donghua Taichu and Augustus were no fools. They upped their speed and chased after Feng Lin, not allowing him to gain any advantage. By logic, the deeper they entered, the more terrifying would the cave dwellers be. Feng Lin and the 2 others continued slaughtering a path out, each displaying their abilities and advancing forward courageously. After they descended for over 20,000 meters, their surroundings suddenly became empty. The cave dwellers couldn't be seen anymore. This place was like an abandoned ground. Feng Lin and the other 2 weren't joyful but were alarmed instead. They felt a deep, evil coldness from the depths of the pit. It seemed like an evil existence was gradually awakening. ZNG, ZNG, ZNG. A bright light flashed as 8 green beams suddenly lit up in the darkness. These green beams of light moved about, filled with vengeful intent. They stared at Feng Lin, Donghua Taichu, and Augustus. Those were eyes. The earth trembled as a gigantic black shadow scuttled on the ground, revealing its malevolent face. Chapter 367, Killing the Chieftain. There were 8 green eyes on the giant head, and cruelty could be seen flickering within. A crawling giant resembling an animal hung on the cave wall. It had a total of 12 limbs, and its body shape was 10 times larger compared to ordinary cave dwellers. Clearly, this was a different species. It opened its mouth as smelly drool splashed on the ground, creating a sizzling noise. This was a cave dweller giant. Roar. The cave dweller giant roared in rage. An intense black-colored wind gusted by, filled with a gloomy aura as the wind enveloped Feng Lin and the 2 others within. The golden crow true fire from Donghuang Taichu and angelic holy light from Augustus instantly dimmed down. Feng Lin's Monkey King domain shrank as his heart monkey force was rapidly consumed. Earthfiend Black Wind. This cave-dweller giant is equivalent to a high-level grand cultivator. In this nest, it undoubtedly qualifies as a chieftain. Let's kill it. As to who can get first place, that would depend on our own abilities. Donghuang Taichu and Augustus roared, not retreating but advancing instead. They rushed over, not fearing the strength of the cave-dweller giant at all. Although this cave-dweller giant was at the Grand Cultivator realm, they were elites of humanity that were walking on powerful mythological pathways and had inherited the abilities of ancient times. How could an alien with merely an immense amount of vitality win against them? This was why they felt no fear at all. Golden Crow Ocean of Fire. Donghuang Taichu's body radiated with a bright light. His true fire increased in intensity, transforming into an ocean of fire that extended outwards. This fire wasn't mortal fire. When he unleashed this move, the flames actually became a liquid form and gushed outwards, incinerating everything within its scope. It couldn't differentiate between friends and foes, even Feng Lin and Augustus were enveloped within. Augustus was also not willing to appear weak. His wings spread out. Sword of Heaven. Large amounts of holy light congregated together, causing a gigantic heavenly sword to materialize. Its light illuminated the surrounding space and was filled with a purifying force. Under its illumination, all objects that had the glow shone upon them began to disintegrate, breaking down into dust. They were completely destroyed. Who? The cave-dweller giant roared in rage. It opened its mouth wide and continued spewing those black gusts of wind. Everywhere the wind passed by, black ice crystals would form, swiftly spreading over. 3 sources of energy collided into each other, forming a visible black-colored region of rumbling chaos. The broken stone walls that entered the region were instantly swallowed whole. Rumble. Damnable humans, you come to hunt my race again. Die. The cave-dweller giant suddenly roared in rage, using human speech. Its 12 limbs grabbed out in all directions, cracking the stone walls like tofu. It pulled them and tossed rocks as thick as pillars over, wanting to smash Feng Lin and company to death. The flying rocks were as dense as rain. The powerful impact instantly forced Donghuang Taichu and Augustus to retreat. But there was a human figure advancing instead of backing away. Under the reinforcement of the heart monkey force, his metal cudgel was as heavy as empty tie. Every cudgel blow would knock the rocks away, shattering them into dust. The gusts of earth-fiend black wind flowed over again, but Feng Lin had already activated his Monkey King domain. Around him, within a radius of 3 meters, he was absolutely invincible. When the gusts of black wind entered, they were instantly split apart and were unable to come in contact with Feng Lin's body. Enlarge. The metal cudgel in Feng Lin's hand expanded, becoming a giant pillar as he swung down with it. The giant had no way to evade. Its head was struck and its body was flung into the depths of the pit from the force. A few more explosive bangs rang out and soon after, the figure of the cave giant had already disappeared. The force of each cudgel strike was tyrannically powerful. When Donghuang Taichu and Augustus saw this, their expressions changed drastically. What a fearsome combat strength. This clearly wasn't a power level somebody could produce at the elite cultivator level. One required a vitality stat of at least 2,000 before they could do this. Could it be that this brat has broken through? He was already a grand cultivator. Feng Lin ignored their surprise. His figure flashed as he jumped into the pit. Follow him. Donghuang Taichu and Augustus exchanged a glance and jumped in as well. Pu, piu, piu. The cave walls shuddered. All of a sudden, iron thorns shot out from the sides of the pit, piercing over. Rumble. Lava began to fill the pit up. It was like a volcano had just erupted. Their way was clearly obstructed. This place was the cave dweller giant's old nest. Its vitality stat was equivalent to a grand cultivator. Naturally, it was impossible for it to only possess a single transcendent ability. Feng Lin wasn't surprised. He didn't slow his steps and directly broke the thorns that blocked him as he rushed into the lava, vanishing from sight as well. Damn, that brat doesn't fear the lava? What mythological path is he walking on exactly? His physical body is so powerful. Donghuang Taichu and Augustus had looks of disbelief on their faces. They could only stop for now. Golden Crow Law Body. Donghuang Taichu was reluctant to accept this. True fire gathered around him, forming an armor that enveloped his body as he rushed into the lava as well. Angel form. The four wings of Augustus wrapped around his body, transforming into a huge egg made from angel feathers as he entered as well. The moment the two of them entered, they found themselves in a sea of lava. Feng Lin had long vanished, and they had no idea where he went. Chase. The two of them rapidly dove down. However, they had no idea that Feng Lin already left them far behind. In fact, Feng Lin even tossed aside his micromecha armor. He depended on his physical body, swimming through the lava like a fish in the sea. After awakening the Monkey King gene, the stone monkey body's ability of being impervious to fire and water was enhanced again. Regardless of how much lava that was, these were at most only mortal fire. They wouldn't be able to harm him. Feng Lin rapidly dove below. To his surprise, he discovered a black hole at the bottom of the lava. It was the source of all the lava here. If one stared at it closely, they would realize that it was none other than the huge mouth of the cave dweller giant. When Feng Lin saw the situation, his heart stirred. If he killed his way over now, it would not be easy to kill it due to how large the cave dweller giant was. And if the fight was delayed, when Donghuang Taichu and Augustus arrived, things would become even more troublesome. Hence, it was best to act fast. Ruthlessness rose in Feng Lin's heart. He swam into the giant mouth and entered it decisively. Gulu. The cave dweller giant made a gurgling sound. It didn't know what it swallowed. After that, his body stiffened. Even before it could make any sense of the situation, it suddenly felt a sharp pain in its stomach. Although it wasn't a fool, how could it know the miraculous aspects of the Sun Wukong mythological path? Right now, its insides were churning wildly. Feng Lin guarded himself, resisting against the corrosion of the giant's stomach acid. Wind, fire, lightning. He unleashed his Monkey King domain once more, enveloping the weak inner organs of the cave dweller giant. With the barrage of energy attacks, its insides were instantly charred, its smelly blood began to flow. The cave dweller giant howled in rage as it began to roll on the ground. In its body, Feng Lin felt his world spinning. However, he ignored it and continued attacking the other organs. Under such heavy injuries, the giant kept howling in pain, but its howl grew silent soon after. Clearly, it was running out of strength. Upon noticing this, Feng Lin steadied himself and rushed forward. His hands were like knives, piercing into the wall of flesh in the giant's insides. As he fumbled around, he suddenly touched a huge pillar-like object. Rise. His face flushed red. He understood that the pillar was the neck bone of the cave dweller giant. He grabbed it and jerked it up. The cave-dweller giant trembled and let out its death cries. No good. Donghuang Taichu and Augustus were still moving through the lava. They increased their speed when they heard the death cries. When they arrived, they only saw a huge head being uprooted. The blood flowing out was like water shooting up into the sky, permeating the atmosphere with a fishy smell. Below the head, a human figure could be seen holding it with a single hand. This figure was covered in blood, but his eyes flickered with fierceness. If it wasn't Feng Lin, who could it be? Chapter 368, Strongest Newcomer. What? He killed the cave-dweller giant. That's too fast. We came too late. How on earth did he do that? Donghuang Taichu and Augustus arrived late and had a silent exchange as they looked at each other. Both of their countenances were extremely grim. After going through so much trouble, they were still one step too late. They couldn't understand the means that Feng Lin had used. How could he kill a horrifying cave-dweller giant so quickly? They were both stunned. However, when they got back to their senses, their gazes turned very strange. Right now, Feng Lin had only beheaded the cave-dweller giant. If they were to fight for it, it'd be dependent on their respective capabilities. Who knew who would win? This guy would probably be too ashamed to say it to others. Even if he did, it'd just turn out to be an intense debate. They might not necessarily lose. Anyway, this guy would be completely humiliated to have his prey snatched by someone else. They seemed to be raring to move. However, before they made a move, a loud bellow suddenly rang out from underground, sounding like an explosive thunder and resonating for very long. I, Feng Lin, killed the cave-dweller chieftain here. I, Feng Lin, killed the cave-dweller chieftain here. I, Feng Lin, killed the cave-dweller chieftain here. 3 consecutive shouts rang out. The sound waves shook the heavens, and the voice could be heard everywhere. What? The cave-dweller chieftain has already been killed. So fast. The amount of information divulged in these shouts was tremendous. The hearts of the many freshmen who were still fighting the cave-dwellers shook, and their movements slowed down a little. In that instant, a series of agonizing cries rang out as the cave-dwellers grasped the opportunity. However, with how loud the voice was, all the freshmen found out that the cave-dweller chieftain had already been killed by Feng Lin. This guy? Both Donghuang Taichu's and Augustus's hearts turned cold. The training is completed. Everyone, I'll be heading back first. Feng Lin looked at the two of them with a smirk. He had noticed their scheme and decided to nip it in the bud. After saying this, he didn't care about the conflict the two of them were feeling and held the cave-dweller giant's head with one hand. He was heading to the surface. Both Donghuang Taichu and Augustus seemed raring to move, but they eventually decided to hold it in, feeling aggrieved. Right now, everyone knew that the cave-dweller chieftain had been killed by this guy. Even if they were to forcibly snatch it from him, they wouldn't be able to change the fact. It was meaningless. As a student of the Great Wall University, the school rules were like military law that everyone had to abide to strictly. As an interstellar human, they weren't allowed to stab their comrades in the back while fighting over their personal interests. It was already too late for them to make a move. If they were to forcibly continue with their plan, not only would it be meaningless, but they would also need to face a great punishment. There was more to lose than to gain. They could only blame this guy for being too sneaky, not giving them a chance to make any move. Dong dong dong. Footsteps smashed heavily on the rock walls, creating tremors. Feng Lin held the huge cave-dweller giant's head with one hand and headed up, being very conspicuous. Everywhere he passed by, when the many cave-dwellers saw that their leader had been killed, all of them cried out in a forlorn manner and fled in all directions, terror-stricken. Those freshmen also got away from the entanglement with the cave-dwellers and looked at this scene in shock. They subconsciously opened up a path. It was only now that they discovered that for some reason, Feng Lin's vitality was now completely above theirs, forming intense pressure. He had attained a breakthrough. This guy already had a vitality of over 1,300 when he was only an elite cultivator. Now that he was a grand cultivator, how much would his vitality be? They couldn't begin to imagine. However, they had all been through this, and there was one thing that they were very clear about. With each breakthrough to a higher realm, their vitality would go through a qualitative leap. With this guy's vitality being above 1,300 previously, he might have already attained a breakthrough past the 2,000 threshold now. Everyone started guessing, but no one could guess what the truth was. When they saw Donghuang Taichu and Augustus gritting their teeth and feeling helpless, they were secretly shocked. Wherever Feng Lin passed by, everyone would naturally open up a path for him. They would unknowingly stand at attention, creating a massive vacant space. When Feng Lin returned to the space shuttle, the instructor's eyes immediately gleamed and he started assessing Feng Lin. Even he found it a little hard to believe. "To think that you're the one who beheaded the chieftain," he exclaimed, losing his composure. "Yes, it was me." Feng Lin replied indifferently, being neither servile nor overbearing. "Excellent. You've already attained a breakthrough to become a grand cultivator." The instructor sensed carefully and his countenance changed. It was really unbelievable for this kid to be able to attain a breakthrough so quickly. However, the truth was placed right before his eyes and there was no room for refute. The instructor controlled the robot to dehydrate the cave-dweller giant's head and then stored it in the space shuttle's storage. This was proof that the training had been completed. The reward distribution will be starting now. His finger tapped out consecutively and everyone's identity microchips started beeping. Feng Lin opened up his account and saw that 100,000 contribution points and 1,000 academic points had been debited into his account. Donghuang Taichu and Augustus had each gotten second and third place from the number of cave dwellers they had killed and received their rewards respectively. Although these rewards were quite significant compared to what the others received, they didn't seem much when compared to Feng Lin's. In an intense competition, but only the first place had value. How many people would remember those who placed in second or third place? This was something that the two of them who were aiming for the first place couldn't accept. The freshmen who were placed within the top 100 received their respective rewards, and those who didn't felt extremely disappointed. Even though they had tried their hardest, they ended up returning empty-handed. Many pairs of eyes fixed onto Feng Lin, filled with jealousy. The latest newbie board will be announced now. At this moment, the instructor spoke up. Everyone was taken by surprise and turned their gaze over. A holographic projection was displayed before them, revealing the ranking board. First place, Feng Lin, academic points, 11,580 points. Second place, Donghuang Taichu, academic points, 3,102 points. Third place, Augustus, academic points, 2,486 points. Feng Lin's name was at the very top and very conspicuous. Not only had Donghuang Taichu and Augustus not shortened the gap, but it was getting increasingly wider. The many freshmen started to feel dissatisfied. Could it be that this Feng Lin was the real strongest newcomer? Regardless of the future. At least for now, he was. In the past, they had thought that the reason why Feng Lin could clinch first place was because he had the advantage of enrolling into the school earlier. However, this interstellar lightning-style battle was proof of Feng Lin's ability. In terms of actual battle prowess, he wasn't considered weak. Moreover, Feng Lin had already attained a breakthrough to become a grand cultivator. Donghuang Taichu wiped out the despise that had been in his gaze all this while and became unprecedentedly serious. You might boast for now, but the day will come when we see who is the superior one. It was definitely not a coincidence to fail repeatedly. Feng Lin's spot in his heart rapidly soared, becoming higher than even Augustus. It seems that Donghuang Taichu isn't the only rival of mine in the Great Wall University. This Feng Lin has also risen to become a great foe as well. Augustus's gaze turned solemn. Everyone carried different thoughts. The space shuttle was quickly started up and moved across the horizon like a meteor, disappearing into the depths of the universe. Chapter 369, Revenge Operation. Time passed by quickly and 1 month was over. The brutal Spartan training continued on as usual. The instructor would put the freshmen through various brutal and inhuman training in form of different missions. However, each of these missions would challenge the limits of the human body. They were torn between ecstasy and turmoil. There wasn't a hint of potential left in them, they had all been exploited to the very last bit. Tempering their bodies under the great pressure at the bottom of the sea, or such thing as walking in outer space. The training came in many variations, and the one that they went through the most was the hunt of various extraterrestrial races. Each extraterrestrial race developed their own type of civilization that differed from each other, they had their own unique traits. They had all kinds of strange conditions, their living environment, their race's abilities, and so on. The situations were extremely complicated. In order to deal with them, it'd be courting death to be charging in recklessly. It was necessary to come up with an extremely detailed plan. This was a test of the freshmen's overall comprehensive capabilities. Each training would be like dancing on a steel wire, being abnormally dangerous. If they weren't careful, the consequences would be dire. Everyone was driven to an extreme every day, and they were exhausted. However, they would have to rapidly recover by the second day and continue on with an even harsher training. The days went on in the same manner. Under the Spartan training, those who didn't have a strong will weren't able to hang on. There were no lack of people who were crying out in agony, wanting to give up. However, under the instructor's merciless lashing, they would still have to continue crawling forward even if they were on their knees. The more one slacked, the worse they would become. Phong Lin understood this on the very first day. Although he had already become a grand cultivator, the amount of training he had to undergo also increased. It wasn't any slacker than the past but became increasingly challenging instead. However, with the Dragon Tiger Exchange fetus pill and powerful will, he finally managed to hang on. The ones who had done approximately the same training as him were only Donghuang Taichu and Augustus. The three of them who were ranked at the top 3 had chased after each other, and unknowingly, had thrown the rest of the students far behind them. At the sight of this, many freshmen understood that Phong Lin was already a grand cultivator like they were and no longer dared to look down on him. Even his vitality, the weakest aspect, had far surpassed them. He had become stronger. To date, the title behind the strongest freshman was still his. Other than Donghuang Taichu and Augustus, no one else could move him from the spot. After experiencing various training missions, the number of points that Phong Lin, Donghuang Taichu, and Augustus accumulated kept on increasing. Their rankings were as follows. First place, Phong Lin, academic points, 18,292 points. Second place, Donghuang Taichu, academic points, 13,450 points. Third place, Augustus, academic points, 11,220 points. The academic points of the top 3 had exceeded the 10,000 point threshold, and Phong Lin's points were getting close to 20,000 points. However, he was dissatisfied with the fact that although he had a lead, the gap in their academic points didn't widen but was slowly shrinking. In the 1 month of Spartan training, Phong Lin saw that the area he was the most lacking in was his foundation. It was too weak. His period of cultivation was too short. Moreover, he had been focusing on only awakening his mythological genes and attaining breakthroughs. He didn't think of researching deeper into alchemy and the gene medicine refinement art, the subject which he had the most talent in. His grasp over other cultivation knowledge and technology were even more superficial. Space shuttle control, firearm usage, mecha battles. These were the areas in which he was weak and he had almost zero knowledge over them. After all, in the solar system, their cultivation and technologies were a far cry from the mainstream places in the interstellar space. There wasn't much that they could impart to him. However, these were all things that one must learn in order to survive in the interstellar space. The environment in the universe was extremely complicated. It would be too weak to rely on the powers of a single person alone. Even if the spiritual stone monkey was capable of transformations and had many tricks up its sleeves, it would be impossible to deal with all different situations. Under some unique environments, technology would be able to unleash the greatest effect. Feng Lin's straitened circumstances were revealed. Thus, the results of the training weren't too good. However, things were different for Donghuang Taichu and Augustus. They were highborn and came from interstellar mythological clans. They had started cultivating from a young age, receiving the most elite education in the interstellar space, and had acquired many skills. The gap between theirs and Feng Lin's academic points kept on shrinking, and they were even showing signs of surpassing him. Despite so, Feng Lin still firmly seated at the top, and they wouldn't be able to surpass him for now. Other than these two, the others weren't even able to get close. I must build up my foundations as soon as possible, Feng Lin thought. Right now, his cultivation base had already caught up with the top-notch batch. He wasn't in as much of a rush as he had been previously. Only by strengthening his foundations would he be able to move faster and steadier in the future. He kept on absorbing new knowledge to fill up the blanks and devoting hard work in his cultivation every day. Even his attributes underwent a change. Name, Feng Lin. Vitality, 3206. Heaven Gene, Monkey King Gene X2. Transcendent Gene, Spiritual Stone Monkey Gene X10, Beast King Gene X10, Minute Knowledge Gene X6, Meditation Gene X5. Genetic Potential, 88. The Monkey King gene had increased by 1 point, and his Tao Heart gene was also on the verge of awakening. After reaching the Grand Cultivator realm, without any support from pill medicine, although his cultivation speed became faster, the requirement for potential became higher as well. Although the Dragon Tiger Exchange fetus pill was good, he was starting to build some immunity to it after having taken it for so many times. The effect was no longer that strong anymore. After an entire month, he only obtained 1,000 points in his genetic potential. The speed was far too slow and wasn't sufficient at all. He could only choose to keep on strengthening his main gene, that was the Monkey King gene. Right now, the range of the Monkey King domain had already expanded to have a radius of 6.5 meters. Both the range and prowess had increased tremendously. With the continuous strengthening of the genetic points, the domain's range and prowess would get increasingly stronger. However, there wasn't much hope for them to improve much during this short period of time. He must find a faster cultivation method. A pressing urgency rose in Feng Lin's heart. The last day of the month came. Feng Lin was still in a deep slumber when the instructor's alarm rang out from his identity microchip. This was a signal to get everyone to gather. Feng Lin turned and got up to his feet by reflex and rapidly headed to the training ground to gather. He noticed that the time was 5 hours earlier than usual. It was midnight. The sky was still pitch black. The Star Fortress had already turned its back. It was nighttime for the Great Wall University. Although there was a time difference, these candidates were all top-notch cultivators and naturally wouldn't be too bothered by this bit of mental fatigue. However, they mumbled amongst themselves, wondering what tricks the instructor was up to this time around. All of them wore strange expressions, feeling scared after recalling what they had been through. Every time there was a change to the training plan, it would be a signal for an important training mission, and thus they would be called for an emergency gathering. At the thought of the Spartan missions the instructor had assigned them in the past, a chill ran down all of their spines. Ba-thump, ba-thump. A series of heavy footsteps rang out. Everyone's eyes narrowed as they saw the instructor walking over in a set of battle armor which he had never worn in front of them before. His aura was emitting without any restraints and he seemed to be ready for action. The instructor would be taking part in this training mission as well? Everyone wasn't pleasantly surprised but was shocked instead. The instructor had always been watching from the sidelines in the previous trainings. Given that he was going to take part in it this time around, the mission should have an unprecedented level of difficulty. The instructor's gaze swept past everyone present, and his voice sounded like stifled thunder as he spoke up. Today, we'll be going through a revenge operation. Hunting down spirit life forms. Chapter 370, 3 Team Leaders. What? Hunting down spirit race? That's too dangerous. This is unacceptable. The moment the instructor said his piece, the voice of protests rang out amongst the freshmen. After training for so long, all of them were aware that the instructor would never give out commands recklessly. The moment the decision was made, it mustn't be defied. However, this time around, they really panicked. Instructor, the spirit race isn't like those extraterrestrial races with low-level civilizations who are still trapped in their own planets. They are one of the 3 greatest archenemies of interstellar humans. We mustn't act rashly. That's right. Spirit races' technologies and abilities are above us, humans. It's too dangerous to act rashly. This mission is too difficult. We're just a bunch of freshmen, we won't be able to pull it off. Seething persuasions broke out from the crowd, hoping that the instructor could change his mind. Feng Lin stood amongst them silently. Military orders were absolute. Since the instructor had made this decision, the Great Wall University must have been aware and acknowledged this mission. There must be a very detailed plan for it. It wasn't something that was decided without much thought. Persuasions were useless. He might as well just observe and see what the instructor was planning. In fact, he wasn't the only one who thought of this. Donghuang Taichu, Augustus, and a few others had also thought of this and laid low in the crowd, not saying anything. The other students were very agitated, but the few of them stood at the very front, not saying anything and appearing to be very conspicuous. Humph. Suddenly, a stifled snort rang out explosively, causing everyone's eardrums to tremble. The freshmen felt as if their heads had been smashed by a huge hammer, which caused them to feel dizzy from the tremble. The chaotic voices were finally suppressed. Are you guys scared of death? The instructor glared at them and spoke up coldly. His voice was like a sharp blade that pierced into everyone's hearts. The freshmen immediately turned flush red, feeling extremely embarrassed. They bellowed out furiously, ignoring the fact that the person they were facing was the instructor. You can kill us, but don't humiliate us. If we're afraid of death, why would we come to this dangerous Great Wall University? The reason we've come here is to protect the entire human race. How can we possibly be afraid of death? Even if you're the instructor, you can't humiliate us like this. Since that's the case, why don't you dare hunt down the spirit race? The instructor asked in a deep voice, interrogating everyone's inner hearts. The freshmen kept on retorting. We aren't afraid of death, but that doesn't mean that we wish to be courting death. The spirit race, silicon-based giants, and engineers, 1. These 3 are mankind's 3 greatest archenemies, and their technologies and civilizations are above that of mankind's. We'd just be courting death if we were to fight against them recklessly. We're just freshmen and not the elite seniors in the university. You guys do know yourselves well. The instructor smiled coldly and his tone was filled with contempt. Suddenly, his expression turned solemn and he spoke out in a low voice, from the moment you entered the school, you should have known that our Great Wall University isn't just a Cosmos University but also a military headquarters. Military orders are absolute. Once the orders are issued, as soldiers, you must abide. I don't wish to hear any more words that defy military orders. Otherwise, military punishments would be dealt. Hearing that, the freshmen no longer dared speak up and could only feel aggrieved. However, the way they held in their emotions showed that they clearly couldn't accept this. The instructor took in everyone's expressions but calmly spoke up, "Don't worry. Even Spartan training is still training. It's not a war. What are you afraid of? All of you are elites amongst the interstellar humans' younger generation. The university won't let you guys go and court death for no reason at all. The latest news that our Great Wall University received is that a probing-type spirit race nest has appeared in the star region over 3,000 light-years outside the Milky Way galaxy. They are scouting the Great Wall University from afar. What we need to do is to remove this spirit race's base. Those spirit life forms had assaulted you guys when you just entered the school previously. Are you guys able to accept the fact that you didn't get to seek revenge? Who knows what is the Great Wall University's school motto? Step forward. Even after a very long time, no one spoke up. Just then, a calm voice rang out. I know. The instructor looked at the person who had stepped forward and broke into a smile. Feng Lin, you say it. Feng Lin's voice sounded solemn as he slowly spoke up. The Great Wall University's motto is, "Those who offend us humans must be killed no matter how far away they are. As long as mankind isn't wiped out, we'll fight it out to our very last breath." His words sounded like metal dropping heavily to the ground with a clank, filled with unwavering determination. When the other freshmen heard this, they couldn't help but wear expressions of embarrassment. That's right. That's our motto. Those who offend us humans must be killed no matter how far away they are. As long as mankind isn't wiped out, we'll fight it out to our very last breath. The instructor bellowed out with his deep voice that resonated in the surroundings like a loud bell. The spirit race assaulted the most elite freshmen amongst our interstellar humans. Therefore, this operation will be named as the Revenge Operation. We'll seek revenge for the freshmen who had lost their lives. Don't worry, this time around, I'll personally lead the Great Wall Warriors to kill the main forces of the spirit race. You guys can just follow behind us and hunt down those spirit octopuses. That sounded much better. When everyone heard that, their countenances became a lot better as well. They were well aware that this instructor's cultivation base was very terrifying. If he were to join in the operation, the mission would undoubtedly become a lot safer and easier. Seeing that there were no longer any objections from the freshmen, the instructor immediately tapped his identity microchip and revealed a holographic projection. A huge black sphere floated in the dark outer space, with 3 small-scaled spheres oscillating around it. The spirit race nest uses the most common mother-child nest's composition, with the mother nest in the center where the large-scale spirits are at and the small-scale spirit lifeforms in the child nest. I'll lead the soldiers straight for the mother nest while you, the freshmen, would be divided into 3 teams, each attacking one child nest. The instructor explained the mission in a very concise manner. From now on, everyone can choose the teams freely. The team leaders will be the top 3 in the newbie board. The first team leader will be Feng Lin, the second team leader will be Donghuang Taichu, and the third team leader will be Augustus. Every freshman can freely choose the team they want to join. Each team can have a maximum of 360 members. If the other 2 teams are already full, the remaining students will be automatically assigned to the team that still has vacancies. As the command was given, the freshmen broke into a commotion once again. I choose Donghuang Taichu. I choose Augustus. I also choose Donghuang Taichu. Everyone started to fight for the spots, and the majority of them chose to join Donghuang Taichu's and Augustus's teams. There were few who chose Feng Lin's team. After such a long period of training, they now had a good understanding of Feng Lin. He came from the solar system, which was a desolate region. Although he was temporarily ranked in the first position, his foundation was too weak and it wasn't a good decision to follow him. I choose Feng Lin. At this moment, a different voice rang out, standing out from the rest. What are you looking at me for? When Feng Lin entered the school, he had fought against the spirit race in outer space and managed to survive. He had gone through a long period of drifting in outer space before arriving in the Great Wall University. In terms of battle experience against the spirit race, no one's stronger than him. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? Hearing that, all the freshmen were struck by a flash of realization. Although Feng Lin didn't have much understanding regarding the interstellar knowledge, his battle experience was the most practical. I choose Feng Lin. I choose Feng Lin too. Within a short period, the number of freshmen who chose Feng Lin as their team leader surged tremendously. Very soon, the division into the 3 teams was completed. Everyone set off. The instructor let out a deep bellow and led all the freshmen into the space shuttle without conducting any checks. The space shuttle was quickly activated and shot out into the sky. The moment they emerged after traveling through the wormhole for over 3 hours. The spirit race nest that had 3 black spheres oscillating around it appeared before their eyes, attracting all the freshmen''s attention. The atmosphere became extremely tense.